to the Coaching Uncovered podcast. My name is Brent Davis and I'm the host of the podcast. And this is my podcast where I get to talk to coaches about coaching. And today I am extremely excited. I have got the guru on. Thanks for coming in, Jason, and talking to me.
Thanks for having me, Brent. This is going to be fun.
Mate, I am shaking. I've got someone who is the podcast expert, who's been doing this for so long, has got all those great shows out there, and I've got you on my show. I'm pumped.
Oh, I don't know if I'm an expert yet. We're still kind of figuring this thing out, but I'm faking it pretty good, I think.
That's all good. So for the two people out there that don't know who you are, can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Oh, wow. Yeah. Grew up, how long do we want to go back, right? So I grew up in a small town in West Virginia. For those in the States know, where I grew up, it wasn't the hotbed of golf and junior golf when I was a kid. So I was really big into all sports. My best sport was probably baseball. Actually, people probably don't know that, but I was fortunate to grow up with a good group of kids that were exceptional athletes. So we won, I think, 3 state championships in baseball. I was on a team that was one game away from the Little League World Series finals. I mean, we were destined for greatness. And then we got to high school, and I think we all sort of found our own niches. And I sort of found golf late, so I didn't get introduced to golf till I was like 12 or 13 years old, and then kind of, just went crazy with it and kind of went my own way in that regards. So got good enough to fortunately play golf in college. I got a couple of kind of low D1 scholarship offers, but decided to go the NAIA route because they wanted to pay for my school. I got a full ride to Glenville State College in West Virginia. It was only a couple hours away from my house, which was kind of nice, but it was far enough away to get out there on my own. So I had a good time with that. I always worked in the golf business. It's kind of interesting. I've never had another job as long as I've been working since I was like 16. Because in the summers I would go and do the the range and the typical bag room kid route during the summer and play a lot of golf. So then when I graduated, I kind of knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to do something in golf. So everybody wants to play. So I'm trying to get better at playing, but I'm like, the first thing that comes to mind when you're going to that route, unless you're an exceptional college player, is you're going to get into, kind of the assistant pro situation. So I was lucky to get a job as an assistant here in West Virginia, and kind of just went from there. So it was like, what route do you want to go when you get in there? But they say you got to get a PGA membership. So I kind of worked on that, worked at a couple different clubs, and was trying to play, and was a pretty decent player, but was never going to play the tour or, play at the next level. So I sort of took the teaching, but I thought, well, maybe I'll try the traditional route as getting a head professional job, which was a huge mistake. But it also brought me to North Carolina. And that's how I got really to Charlotte. Is I got my first head professional job when I was like 27, 28, completely unaware of what I was getting ready to take on. Was a huge failure, but I learned a ton in that role as a couple years. But it really, I always say it's one of my biggest failures because it taught me really what I did want to do the rest of my career. And really started teaching a lot more as I was trying to run, a pretty decent size operation. And then once I figured out, hey, I really want to start to teach full time, I was very fortunate to get hooked up with Dana Rader, which was my first mentor, basically. She had a top 25 golf school in the area and was a top 100 coach. And so she gave me a redneck kid from West Virginia an opportunity, and I just sort of ran with it from there. Worked for her for 11 years, which was life changing because I could just work on my skills and work on my craft as a coach, and didn't really have to worry about anything else as far as running tournaments or folding shirts and taking care of members. So started to get a little bit better. Got a pretty decent reputation. Started to win a few awards. And then, it's like, what's the next step? And the next step is I wanted to be in a place where I could sort of run my own programs and kind of do my own thing and be Dana Rader would be the boss. I didn't want to run a golf school, but I just wanted a small little academy. So right up the road, Carmel Country Club, which is where I'm at now, came open, and I was happy to get that job and kind of start. And I've been there 9 years, so it's been a really good ride, and I just love what I do every day.
Awesome. It's so cool to have something that you enjoy going to for a job, and there's so many people out there that don't have that luxury of going to something they enjoy. And I certainly get where you're coming from with regards to being in that club pro space. It's certainly a challenge dealing with certain types of people inside of that role. So being out there
Well,
and coaching.
nothing against club pros. It just wasn't my passion, right? I mean, I think it's a very important part of our business, but I think the key is, as we get older, we start making making decisions. We have a little bit more, I guess, self awareness of like what we're good at and what we're not good at. And I was definitely not good at being a club pro, and I really felt like I had some skills that I could develop as a coach and as a teacher. So turns out I made a pretty good decision.
Yeah, no, certainly be on
It's
the
worked
same
out
page.
okay.
It has. It has. So talk me through some of those early influences. You said you spent some time with Dana Rader, which is obviously
Mhm,
pretty cool.
mhm.
Um, what are some of the things that she brought into your coaching early on that really stuck with you?
Yeah, I mean, I think as we all have mentors, and I have hundreds. Like the list is long of people that have influenced me over the years. But her really just giving me an opportunity to have an environment to learn and to grow, not just professionally, but personally as well. And I think she was probably a bigger influence on me personally than even professionally, even though that was, kind of goes hand in hand. But the things that come to mind is just that she was kind of a trailblazer as far as women in golf at that time, and is a legend now in the teaching game. And she taught me how to set goals. She taught me really how to be a continuous learner, and really the benefits of that and the importance of that to reach my goals. Because when I came in there, I was a reasonable teacher. I'd say a decent teacher. And looking back, I didn't know crap, right? I mean, it wasn't. You think you know a lot more when you're 29, 30 years old. You don't know anything. I still don't know anything, but it's an opportunity to really focus on what something that I really enjoyed doing and really loved and was curious about, and then it just opened up a whole new world for me. So, I really just put my nose down and started grinding, and started reaching out to people, going to seminars, and started the continuous learning. But again, it's not even that; it's just more of the other side of. She taught me how to deal with people. She taught me how to deal with different personalities. Like I said, she taught me how to set goals and like how to really hold yourself accountable. And then you got 8, 7, 8, 9 other people that you're working with in a golf school environment like that are all sort of moving in the same direction. So you've got it was just amazing to me before I got there as a head pro. I really didn't have anybody to talk to about teaching. And then now I got 10, 12 people that I can go in and say, hey, what about this idea? What are you learning? What are you reading? How do I get better? So we all sort of pushed each other in the same direction. And that was what was really great. So the big thing I remember when I first got there and we started setting goals, and she said, well, what do you really want to do? And I said, well, a couple of things. I want to be a top 100 teacher. So this is a long time ago. And I was like, and that came to fruition after several years. And I said, I want to have the respect of my peers. And she's like, well, what does that look like to you? And I said, well, I just want to be respected for somebody that works hard and also gives back. Right. So, and that didn't flip for me for a couple of years, but she helped me to kind of look at things differently from, the sort of the servant mindset rather than the ego mindset. And that was, I think, probably what really turned my career around.
No, that makes so much sense, and I just really enjoy the fact that you're open to improving early on, which is always comes up in your podcast that you're always open to improving, and I just really enjoy the fact that it's about connection with those students. That's what I heard through that answer there. The fact that you can be the expert in golf swing or all the different technologies or all the different coaching theories out there, but if you can't get it across to that student standing in front of you, it just can't work. So that's awesome that you're heading down that path. Really cool. So, who else was an early influence on you apart from Dana? Who else is the one that kind of stands out as people that you go and talk to about coaching?
Gosh, I mean, like I said, the list is long, and I would probably leave somebody out. But I mean, just early on, and it's kind of grown into the people that I surround myself with now, as I call sort of my mastermind crew, or like my personal board of directors. But I mean, early on, the first big teaching seminar that I went to, I started at Dana's it was 2000, 2001. I went to a big teaching seminar at Jim McLean Golf School when he was at Doral, and that it just opened up another avenue to like how different coaches do things. And I was just like, wow, this is really cool. Things that you can learn from other coaches. And then from there, I just started going crazy with, trying to reach out to people. And this is, as the internet started to get more and more traction, and it was a little bit easier to get in front of folks and get in touch with folks, but going to as many seminars as you can, I just started to build a bigger network. I mean, anywhere from, some of the legends now, like Jim Hardy, Chuck Cook is a, big influence on me. Then we start getting into guys that, are sort of my age and even the younger coaches now, like Chris Como. And I mean, golly, the John Graham, and we can go into putting stuff. I mean, David Orr. I mean, there's too many to even like Chuck Evans. When I got into Golfing Machine, I mean, it's like Charlie King, as far as like marketing and mindset. I mean, there's just so many people that have been so gracious to spend time with me, and that's why I'm so passionate about passing all this stuff on to other people and young coaches out there, because I think it's a necessary thing, and it's something I enjoy doing.
No, that's really cool. I'm going to get to your little crew, your little team that you had on the podcast only a few shows ago. I think you had your staff on having a bit of a chat. I think over a couple of bottles of wine at some stage there. I think I saw some
Always.
photos. Is really cool. But
Yeah.
so I'll certainly get to those. But I hear you on your podcast talk a heap about being a coach as opposed to being a teacher. And it's something that I encourage people that I'm talking to about coaching to be. What does that mean to you?
Yeah, it's something that I've really put a lot of stress on really in the last 4 or 5 years, is getting a little less involved in technique and then bridging that gap to, personal performance. Or, we always hear about they hit it great on the range, you don't hit it really good on the golf course type of situation. So I think you've got to be able to separate the different skills from being a teacher and a coach. I think you have to be both. So I feel like I'm a really good teacher, but I felt like I was lacking in that sort of coaching piece. So we have really dived into the game like training stuff with Ian Highfield, just all the things that the intention piece that we talk about, as you probably heard on the podcast the other day, is just such an important thing. Getting into the brain and getting into the mindset of the player affects how the body moves and how the club moves. So it has to be a part of the complete teacher, the complete coach. So it's something that me and my staff have really been passionate about in the last few years, because if not, I don't know that we're truly helping our players perform better, right? So it's like, as Ian says, you're either training to learn or you're training to perform. And I think there has to be a flow from beginning to end, and it has to end with performance, right? So we're based on results from our players. That's how we're measured as coaches. Like, you can make them hit the ball great on the range, but if it's not turning into better scores or achieving their goals, then we're really not doing the best we can. So I think you have to have both.
Do you think, and I would agree that, or I certainly think that we focus too much on technique as golf coaches, or we have in the past. I think it's changing now, which is great. So, do you
Yeah.
think that's a problem that golf coaches have come across over the years?
I think you can get lost in mechanics for sure, but I don't think it's a bad thing. It's just I think the genius coach knows when to transition. It knows when that player needs this, whether it's technique change, whether it need, pattern change, and they need to know when to transition into, how do we play, right? How do we get, random practice and games and getting people onto the golf course? I think there has to be a blend of both. So I wouldn't say that, I wouldn't label it as we've been too technique driven because I think that's super important. And I think that's something, if I don't think you can have one without the other, right? So conversely, you can't just take a new player or an average golfer and say, we're just going to take you onto the course and we're going to learn to play if they can't get it in the air or they can't control their golf ball, right? So I mean, there's a little bit of blend of both, but again, it's like making those decisions as coaches is what we do on a day to day basis, and a lot of times we can't explain why we do it. It's just more, instinct. I think is a big deal when it comes to doing our job. When do you transition? When do you make changes? When you don't make changes? That's some of the things that I think is difficult to explain when young coaches come to watch me teach, or we talk. I talk teaching with other coaches. A lot of times they'll be like, "Well, why'd you do that?" I'm like, "I don't know. It just felt right." It's just that's what needed to happen. Like that's what my brain's constantly going 1,000 miles an hour, even though I'm not speaking a lot of times. And then at some point, you got to make a decision, right? So if this guy's if there's a swing technique problem that needs to change, and you feel like if we don't change it, then he's not going to be able to perform, then you have to make that decision, and you got to get buy-in from the student, obviously. And then if it's like, okay, I can kind of leave that alone. I think this is functional. I think this is repeatable. Let's go test it on the golf course. Then you have to do that as well. And I think that's why I love the programs that we've kind of gone through the last couple of years. Um, is more of an unlimited lesson program, and that's allowed us to do that. Like you have to have the space in the golf course to do it, which we have a busy golf course, but now we have the time to do it because we got people that buy into more of a long-term plan rather than, a one-off lesson where you don't see them once a month. I'm not sure that works a lot of times.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to cover off on what you do program wise at your setup. But I just wanted to cover quickly there. We had a chat with Travis Harrison, who's on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, and he was talking about pushing to the edge of someone's comfort zone with those players. And I think you brought it up there. So
Mhm.
you said you can't take them on the course if they can't get it in the air, but you have to be able to get them onto the golf course at some point in time. So you said it was instinctual. Was it something that you've always had, or was it something that you built on, or that understanding of the time to switch over?
Yeah, I just think it's a lot of time spent on the lesson tee. It's just you can't really replace experience. You just keep doing things, making a lot of mistakes, taking people maybe too much down the rabbit hole of technique and then failing, and then going back and reflecting on, maybe I should have done something different. I mean, I do a lot of reflecting on lessons and things that I do with my players, and then trying to not make the same mistake twice. So I think it's just teaching a lot. I mean, that's just the best answer I can give you. It's just a lot of hours spent on the lesson tee, a lot of hours dealing with different people, different types of players, and asking the right questions. Always kind of having a pulse on your player, right? How they feel. Because it's not all about us, it's about them, right? So it's just a lot of that. I mean, I don't know if that answers your question, but again, it's a gut instinct that I think is developed over time. That's hard to explain.
Yeah, no, I completely get it, and I'm guilty myself. I'll put my hand up and say I was guilty early on of didn't want to coach until I had it perfect, but it's
Right.
something that's always changing. It's something that's always evolving, and been
Always.
coaching for 20. I've been coaching for 20 years now, and there's always something. You're always improving. Always got something out there that's coming along to improve your coaching. So, encouraging all coaches out there to get out there and start coaching as soon as you can. Really cool.
Well, that brings me to that. the importance of having that relationship and that trust of the player, right? Because I mean, there's plenty of times. I had Sean Foley in my place a couple of years ago, and he was coaching at the Wells, and I brought him over, and he was nice enough to talk to my staff. And the thing that stuck with me that he said was, "Don't be afraid to fail. Like, don't be afraid to screw up, right? Because if you're not, then you're not taking enough risk, and you're not really getting the most out of your player. But if you have that relationship and that trust, then being able to pivot is a skill, right? Being able to like move to something, that, hey, this isn't working. We need to go in another direction without completely shattering the confidence of your player, I think is a skill as well. But I mean, it's just that's you got to almost go to the edge of like, all right, I'm going to push this player as far as I can, and let's see what happens, and then start to bring in like the game like training stuff, right? Then you bring them in the golf course and then you test it and you put enough pressure on it, as much pressure as you can. I mean, obviously we're talking mostly about tournament players, but even for club players that have aspirations to really get better, I think it's an important part. And you got to know when to back off and you got to know when to push them a little bit.
I've always encouraged anyone that I'm helping out with their coaching to start coaching the kids at their club, start coaching the juniors, because you can screw the kids up. You can always get them back later on. And I've screwed up plenty of kids over the years, so that's fine. That's part of the fun of. But again, you can always, and I tell this story as well. I was coaching in Australia for quite, probably 10 years, and then I got a job overseas in Taiwan where I was coaching a national squad over there. So all of a sudden, I had 20 kids in my squad that could do exactly the stuff I was telling them, and I worked out that some of the stuff I was teaching wasn't right because they were.
That's a good learning, isn't it?
So
Yeah.
made a quick pivot on my coaching ideas pretty quickly over there. So that's really cool. Okay, so you talked about your early college career, and that's something that we don't have in Australia. So talk me through what college golf is like as a player, and then I'll get to your college players as well.
Yeah, it's changed a lot since I was younger, and also going through. And for those people out there that follow me, know that I have a son now that plays D1 college golf. So I've gone through it as a parent, as a coach, and also as a player. So I've made a lot of mistakes along the way, but now I guess back in those days, I mean, I barely remember my recruiting process. I mean, like I said, it was like sending out a letter to a coach or a videotape. It was like VHS tapes, that's how old I am. So it's like contacting coaches and then hearing back from them. They go through your high school coach, whatnot, and then they start offering you whatever they're going to do. And it was funny because I look back and I was just talking to somebody the other day about this very thing, and like I got 50% offers that I turned down thinking that wasn't enough. And nowadays, like that's amazing. Like, if you get a 50% offer, for a D1 program, that is really, really good because they only get 4.5 scholarships for a team. So I'm not sure if I made the right decision back in the day, but I got a full ride to a smaller school and I got to play, which was good. I wish I probably would have taken more advantage of that opportunity as I didn't work as hard as I should have. I had a lot of fun in college. That's another story. But nowadays it's almost a business, right? I mean, kids are getting recruited so early. I mean, I'm coaching a lot of kids. I got a girl that's like 13 and she's like already, getting contacted by colleges. Kids are getting, and they've changed rules a little bit now. I know, cause I don't know if you've had any college coaches on the program, but they're trying to make it a little bit more difficult for kids to commit so early because kids are committing like in 8th and 9th grade, which is, I don't think the best thing for college golf because a lot of things can change, as from then till senior year. So they're getting recruited. And nowadays, I mean, right now with COVID, the coaches can't even watch them, which is kind of crazy. So they're just talking to them on Zoom. But typically, the coaches can go watch them play, and then they start talking to them. They take visits, and then start making decisions.
I was surprised at how huge the program was over there because I hadn't had any exposure to it at all until I was
Oh
in
yeah,
Taiwan. And we took the kids over to play some tournaments in the US, and we went to Southern California. We played the Junior Worlds. We played some AJGA events,
right.
a couple of other things there. But that pre-qualifying rounds for junior tournaments. It just blew my mind that they had a
Yeah.
full field pre-qualifying round prior to the junior events. It was just unbelievable how huge it was. Crazy.
Yeah, I mean, AJGA has kind of got a nice little hold on a lot of kids that really want to play college golf and big time college golf. You don't have to go that route, but I mean, you almost have to get noticed unless you're really really good. But yeah, you got to Monday qualify into some of those tournaments if you don't have enough stars. It's ridiculous.
It just surprised, and even the college rules as well. So with Junior Worlds, that squad that I took over there, we were fortunate. We had three of the girls finish top 10 in Junior Worlds, and two of the boys finished top 10. So I
Nice.
had I had college coaches because I was out there with my guys, and they're handing me their cards, and I'm like, just go and talk to the kids. They're over there, but they
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 can't.
couldn't come off the cart path. There was all these rules and regulations that I just couldn't get my head around. So it was a strange situation. So you brought up your son who's now playing college golf as well. So I did want to chat about that. And from a coaching perspective, obviously you got him started into golf.
Mhm.
Are you still coaching him now, or how have you dealt with that?
Yeah, he hadn't fired me yet, which is
Good.
nice. Yeah, it's been a really interesting journey because we had a lot of ups and downs, like relationship wise, more ups and downs. Thankfully, he had a lot of ups and downs in his career. He went through a big slump when he had a big growth spurt. His sophomore year, he grew like 9 inches, got a lot stronger, and all of a sudden couldn't find his golf ball. So it was an interesting journey that turned out positive. Luckily, he ended up getting a very late two offers his first of his senior year. So that was really cool because I mean, literally, we didn't know, if he was going to play or he wasn't going to play. I knew he was good enough to play because I'd seen him, I was coaching him, and it was just a matter of getting the coaches, the late in that game that had room on their teams to offer him. So, Tennessee Tech University reached out, Marshall reached out, and it's been such a great fit. And he's had, aside from not being able to play this fall, as far as the team goes, he's played some individual events and he's continues to get better. Now he's strong enough to, as I say, make the changes that I saw in his swing when he was a little skinny 140-pound kid. Now he can actually support the changes and he just keeps getting better. So the future looks pretty bright for him.
No, it's really cool. So how do you blend in that father role and the coach role at the same time? That must be challenging for you, I'm sure.
It really was because I mean, like I said, I always tell when I do talks at like junior golf meetings or college recruiting meetings that I'm a much better junior golf coach than I am a junior golf parent. um, because it was difficult to separate the two. As far as we, when we would work together, um, at the start, like let's say when he was like 10, 11, 12, and he started to get really good, I thought that I was spending enough time with him when I would spend 10, 15 minutes in between lessons or just have a quick look on the range. And we had to, at some point, we had a little team meeting. Shout out to my wife that was kind of the moderator and kind of kept this thing all, that she's really the glue that keeps this thing going. We had a little team meeting and we sort of voiced our concerns. And he said, Dad, I'm playing against all of your students and you're only giving me 15 minutes and you're giving them 2 hours. So
Fair
that was
point.
that was a big, yeah, absolutely. And I was like, you're exactly right. So once we started literally scheduling hour to 2 hour lessons per week, then things got a lot better. But then on his end, he was not always the greatest student. So we would literally verbalize the fact that when I was getting ready to coach him, I would say, okay, I'm putting the coaching hat on. Right. And then if I was going to be the father, I'd say, okay, I'm putting the dad hat on now. Okay. So we would literally talk that out. And I said, are you ready to be the student or are you ready to be the son? And then, so we'd had to come to an agreement and then everything went great. So as we grew through that, and again, going through the slump and then the resurgence at the end, it really, our relationship got much, much stronger. And then now it's great. I mean, it's like, I enjoy working with him. And like he calls me to every tournament now when, he's had a couple of individual tournaments here during COVID. And he's literally, he's like calling me like, "Hey, you got to come early. You got to, we need to do some work." It's like teaching a little mini tour player. And I'm like, "Dude, you're fine." Because we do a lot of FaceTime lessons. We do a lot of stuff online, and he sends me videos now when he's not in town. But it's still, yeah, we're very really close. I mean, he's really my best buddy.
Awesome. That sounds
Yeah.
really cool. But I'm sure he at some stage through his teenage years, he went through that stage where I don't care what you say, Dad. I'm doing what I want to do.
100%. Yeah, and he'll tell you that too. He's been on a couple podcasts, and they've asked him, what is it to like have your dad as being a top coach? He goes, "Well, for a long time I didn't think he knew what he was doing." And then I guess, people started telling, his friends would be like, why aren't you listening to your dad? Like, he's a really good teacher." And finally he's like, it started to come around, but he still probably won't give me too much credit. It's kind of like Colin Morikawa, or I'm sorry, Xander Schauffele's dad. He's like, I don't want to tell him that he's awesome because it'd be like, it'd be bowing down to him. But someday maybe he'll give me a little bit of credit when he's on tour.
That's really cool. Really cool. I'm sure it's a challenging space for you, and it sounds like you've got it set up really well. I
It
really
is.
enjoy that changing hats is a pretty cool idea. So that's pretty awesome. Now, when we're trying to schedule this podcast, we had a date timed out, or I had a date sorted out, but then you had a college trip with some of your college players. Can you talk me through the process that you go through with your college players when they're out playing?
Yeah, well, that was me going to watch my son.
Oh, was it okay?
Yeah, but I work with a couple of the kids on his team as well, just through the relationship that we have and getting to know them. So there was two or three of the kids from his team coming, and then I had, I think, three or four other kids from other colleges that were in the tournament too. So I'll just spend a little time with them on the range. I mean, it's mostly they kind of understand in that situation, like my son takes precedent, right? So I'm going to be with him. But if somebody needs a look, or I'll try to get their practice rounds together. A lot of times where I can watch them all, and I'm always going out with him for practice rounds. He wants me to help him with his decade and help him with his his indicators and his lines and stuff like that. So yeah, it's kind of like teaching on tour, but not really being on tour. It's kind of difficult, but yeah, I mean that's the only time I don't go out with my other college players. At this point, it's just always with my son. But usually, I have somebody else. I have other players in the field typically.
So how do you set up? Because in Australia we have a similar type of setup. Isn't obviously the same, but we have when a player gets to that high performance stage and they get picked up by the Golf Australia squads, they have an overseeing coach that kind of oversees their training, and then they have their home coach as well. So how
Mhm.
do you set up your coaching and tie it into what the college coach is doing as well?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think and a lot of the college coaches are really good about contacting me, about their players, because I think it's important that college coaches aren't trying to be swing coaches a lot of times. And I think it's a real important relationship for college players to be successful, is that the college coach has a relationship with the swing coach or with the mental coach or whoever they're working with. So I just try to keep an open-ended conversation, and try to just let them know what we're working on and what they need to keep an eye on as far as their technique or their mindset, or whatever we're working on. I think it's super important because they're going to be with them way more than me. Once they go off to school, all I'm getting is mostly videos and, FaceTime calls or whatever. So I mean, Coach Brown and Coach Smith at Tech have been great because, I mean, literally if there's a problem, like they'll FaceTime me with Nick, like on the range or during practice, and, or whoever it is I'm working with on the team, and just handle it right there. That way they can kind of give me feedback on what's happening. And because again, they're going to be like my eyes and ears. So it's a very important relationship, I think.
I'm sure it's challenging, and I have heard issues with players over here where they have issues with coaches overstepping their bounds. So I think it's
Yeah.
pretty clear from what you say to set those boundaries straight away.
I've had just as many on the other side, just like you. I mean, I've had coaches that don't call me, and I get their players every couple of weeks, and the players are giving me feedback like my coach wants me to do this with my swing, or he wants me to do this with my putting stroke, and it's like completely opposite of what I'm trying to do, and it's not a good way to for a college kid to be successful. That's for sure. Too much conflict. I mean, they have enough time worrying about everything they're dealing with at school, much less having a different message from multiple voices.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Now, obviously, you're a successful coach where you are. You've got a thriving coaching setup there. How have you set your coaching programs up at your facility, and why have you done them that way? I heard you talk about long-term programs. Can you talk me through some of your coaching programs?
Sure. Yeah. Like I said, I've been there 9 years. When I came in, I wanted to make sure that me and the staff, or whoever the guys that were working underneath me, sort of had a constant and consistent message. So first thing I did was just develop just a simple framework of like how we're going to teach. And don't get me wrong, this is not it's not a method. It's not anything but just, okay, here's what's important. And then my guys that work for me all teach a little bit different, and I encourage them to have different styles. So that was kind of the first thing that we did. I call it my mastermind skills, which is pretty basic stuff. And then as far as programming, when I came in, it was basically the normal programming of like, you do private lessons and you have like little group clinics with your ladies, or you have group clinics with adults, and then you obviously have juniors. And it took me a couple of years to figure out that I wanted to do something a little bit different, and trends started happening. And some of my other friends, like you talked about, Jason Hellman, credit him to pushing me more into a long-term coaching
Don't
mindset.
give him too much credit.
I know, I hated to even say that, and that's my boy. But yeah, so he actually pushed me into the Biggest Loser program, which I started. I guess it was like the second or third year I was there, which is, I had some gamification uh, products there where they're trying to lower their handicap, and it also had a time frame rather than just doing one-off lessons. So it was a combination of private lessons and sort of supervised practice. So that was sort of revolutionary at that time. Like nobody was really doing it. Corey Lundberg, I think, was doing it at the time too. So I had to talk to him. So we started all kind of pushing the industry in that direction, which was great. That was fantastic. I started branching out, doing like level 1, level 2, level 3 programs where it required time, and then just a mix of those sort of buy-in from the student that you don't get from like a one-off lesson or a one per month. It gets the student in a different mindset of like, okay, I really want to get better, and this is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to spend more time with my coach. So going forward, everything kind of is cyclical, right? So after 4 or 5 years, started seeing a little bit of a downturn, and I'm always trying to like mix things up and try something new. And then a couple years, I guess it's been 2 years ago, I had my friend Scott Caux come in and do a certification for my staff and for some other pros. And I was talking to him, and I was like, well, "What are you doing?" I think he was at Hamilton Farms at the time, with your programs, because I do unlimited. I'm like, really? I'm like, that's interesting. So we talked about that, and I said, well, why can't we do that? I already had an annual unlimited that I was doing, but that was it. I said, why can't we chunk it into smaller time frames and see how that goes? And Robbie had just started with me, so I was trying to get his book full, and Seth was starting to get busy. So I'm like, this would be a great way to kind of fill all our books, and then also get the students that you want that are really committed to getting better, right? So it's like I got a big club. There's still plenty of room for that one-off lesson situation. We got like a little burst program where you can do a 5-lesson series, but now I do 3 months, 6 month, and a year unlimited, where they can see the coach as much as they want. Now we got to put some constraints on it, obviously, because it can get out of hand, especially with kids and the juniors. So I'll tell them that, I don't want to see them more than twice a week. And typically most of my adults are working anyway. So it's like once a week tends to be sort of the average. But what it allows me to do is spend more time on the golf course with them. So good example is I'll have one of my guys will come in for like maybe a mechanical sort of technique lesson for an hour one day per week, and then schedule 2 hours the next week, and we'll go play 9 holes and we'll go on course and do strategy stuff. And it's just been amazing. We're all super busy, um, which obviously helps create value for your membership and your players, because now you got buy-in from both sides and you can take your time, right? You can really train people properly rather than just throwing band-aids on, a guy that wants to hit it better and, win his Nassau on Saturday. I'm building golf swings. I'm building performance in my players now. It doesn't matter the handicap. I just took on an annual student last week that's a beginner. It's going to be awesome. I'm so excited for this guy. Like, he's a high performer. He's really driven. He's all in, and it's going to be fun to just get him playing golf. So it's like, it doesn't just have to be a really good player to buy into this stuff. I think it's effective for all levels of skills.
That's really cool. I think it is a challenge to get students to commit long term. So, how did you find the switch? So, I'm assuming that you don't do any private lessons anymore, any one-offs coaching, or you still offer that?
No, we still do privates. Yeah, we still do the privates. It's just another option, right? It's like, you get, because everybody's going to sign up for a private lesson, and they're going to be like, hey, what do you offer? And then we kind of lay it on them and say, here's what we do. It's really, really simple. It's simple accounting wise, obviously, because you just have a lump sum for this time. And I say, well, if you don't have, and I always tell them, like, if you can't commit to at least one a week, then I don't want to sell this to you, because I don't want to waste your time and my time. And then the other side is just the 5 lesson burst that we do for, we sell a bunch of those too, because that's the person that, just wants to take 4 or 5 lessons, and they end up taking more, and you end up turning those 5 lessons into a long term after a while anyways, if they figure out they have a little bit more time to work on their game or the play. And this year, now with COVID, I mean, our golf course is busier than ever. People are home, so they're just trying, and this is their outlet. So we've been busier than we've ever been, because everybody's, this is their time to kind of get out of the house and work on their game. So it's been a win-win for us for sure.
Awesome. So talk me through your structure there. You've got a couple of staff under you that work with you. I heard them on the podcast as well, coming and chatting. So talk me through your structure there. So there's obviously you overseeing the whole academy, but who else is working for you?
Yeah, I've got Seth Mers. He's my director of junior golf, and he teaches adults obviously as well. But he has a very, very big job, because we have 1,500 members and a very, very active junior golf program that he adopted from Maggie Simons, which was there before, and she's now director of instruction in Oregon. So we were actually the very first private club to have what we used to be called iGrow. Now it's Op 36. I don't know if you've heard of that in Australia. Yep. It's probably the by far the best junior golf program out there, started by a couple of guys from Campbell, which are just doing a fantastic job. Now, like, they've got over 800 facilities and all around the world now. So we were the very first one. So we were kind of the guinea pig. I told them, I met with those guys at the PGA show, whenever they started 4, 5, 6 years ago. I've lost count, before it was even completed. And I said, sign us up, because it was that good. I mean, it's just such a great deal. So they're doing that. So we've grown that over the years, and now we've always been busy, but I feel like we're a more effective junior golf. We have a more effective junior golf program that is full with a wait list every time. So he's a very integral part of our system. And he was a PGM student that interned for me. Both my guys, who are just younger than me, are PGM students. He was from Mississippi State. So he's been with me the longest. He actually left and came back after Maggie left, and I gave him an opportunity. He's a fantastic coach. And then Robbie Fales, that's been with me for a couple of years, came from Clemson's PGM, is just a superstar coach. I mean, if you listen to him on the pod, he's just really smart, gets after it, is doing all the certifications and getting the information. So yeah, we're all kind of helping each other get better. I mean, these guys, they test me every day because they're learning stuff faster than I can even blink, and so they're pushing me to get better, which is what it's all about.
No, that's awesome. I've got two more on my hit list now to come and get on my podcast as well. So, boys, if you're tuning in, I'll be hitting you up to come and have a chat to me as
Absolutely,
well.
yeah. You need to have them on. I mean, they're both superstars.
I will get them out here. So, I really enjoy the conversations you have on your podcast about their ongoing training. You're always talking to them about coaching. Always setting chats up with them to improve their coaching. So, talk me through how you've formally set up their ongoing training.
Yeah, I mean, at first, before we're even, I guess we do it more in the off season, I would say, because I don't want to like take up too much of their time if they can be teaching. But we called them Guru Tuesdays first because we used to have like a meeting. I would block our books for an hour every Tuesday, and we would get together, and it was more about just catching up with them because even though we're teaching in the same facility, like we're going 100 miles an hour in other directions, we really don't even get to talk as much as we want to until things slow down in the off season. So the way I did it was I would have them bring case studies in, kind of like you heard on the last couple of podcasts, and we would just talk about what will we do, why did you do that, and go through it, and then I would share my insights because I watch them teach a lot. If I ever have any time free, which hadn't been much this year, I'm always kind of peeking in on their lessons and listening to them because I learned something, but also they enjoy getting feedback from me of like, hey, what'd you think? And that's really how we get better. So it's not even about me holding a meeting and telling them how to teach. It's more about us talking about teaching and sort of growing together. Um, Now, as we get into the fall here, and then we'll start slowing down hopefully in the next month and a half. It just depends on the weather here. We'll start having more and more meetings. So we came up with the idea of these Ask the Guru and staff podcasts where, we've done a couple in the dojo, but now they'll just come over to the house, which is a heck of a lot more fun because we get to drink a little wine and then we talk. And we basically have a staff meeting. It's the coolest staff meeting on the planet, right? Because we
Yeah.
get to have some good wine and really just talk about what's been going on. How's the teaching going? What do you need to know more about? What are your goals? And then I'll meet with them individually, in the off season as well to kind of get their ideas. Because if I know where they want to go, then I can help them get there.
I like it a lot. That's an awesome little setup there. So we've brought up your podcast a few times through this chat. Why did you get started in podcasting? What was the idea behind that? You've been obviously doing it for a fair while now. What was the thought process behind getting involved with that?
Man, that's I was kind of hoping you'd ask me that question because I was thinking about it today and was like, why did I do it? And it was just kind of the next step, right? So I was thinking back to when I guess 2008, 2009, when social media and then really in the golf industry sort of started booming. And I credit Charlie King to this. For this, I went to a meeting or a seminar or something. He was talking about YouTube was starting to get hot, and blogs were starting to get hot. So I started my own YouTube show called Guru TV. I started a blog, which now it's become my website. We all started getting active on Twitter and Instagram. Came along much later. So it was like I needed something new, right? I just needed another platform to kind of get my message out. And I had no idea how to do it. I was like really afraid of like, I don't even want to talk on the telephone, much less get on a microphone half the time. So it's interesting that I had the idea because I had started listening to podcasts really in the last year. I mean, really, I guess before I even started mine, which has only been like a couple years, but prior to that, it was all like CDs and cassettes and different programs that we would listen to in the car. And now podcast has kind of taken that role. And there's a guy that works at the club and he just worked in like banquets. And we kind of struck up a friendship and he was an ex rapper. Okay. So he's an art, he was an artist. I mean, this guy's amazing. And he goes, yeah, I'm trying to get my Instagram thing going. And he's like, can you help me? Cause you seem to be really good about the social media stuff. I'm like, yeah, I'd be happy to help you. Like, tell me your story. He's telling me he's a rapper. He's going to start a production company, all this stuff. And I go, dude, how do I start a podcast? He goes, oh, I can help you with that. So he kind of talked me through like sort of the ins and outs of it. And he was my producer for like the first podcast. And then after that, I was like, well, I can probably do this on my own. I don't really need, because it was just, he lived way far away. So that's how I started. And honestly, I had no intention of, I know that the podcast world, and you've probably done this research too. It's like most people do about 6 of them and quit, right? And so if you last like 10, they say, well, you kind of made it. So my goal is to do 100. And I was like, all right, well, I've kind of done that. So initially, I had no intention of doing anything. I was just like, all right, let's see how this goes. And then it became really fun. And I was building new skills. I was doing some different things. I was learning a lot. I was networking. This was my, when you can't get out and you get these guys on the podcast, and I've struck up some great relationships with guys that I've always wanted to talk to and learn from. And it's just kind of steamrolled from there. So I don't know. I'm gonna keep it going, I guess. As soon as I figure out, as soon as I think like, man, this is a lot of work and I just don't want to do this anymore, somebody reaches out to me and says, you've made an influence, you've made a difference in my life, in my career. And I'm like, gosh, I got to keep doing it.
Keep going,
I
please.
got to keep going. Yeah. So it's like, but I really enjoy it. It's a lot of work, as you know, and you do such a great job. I've already started listening to yours, and but it's very, very rewarding to like affect other people, and for people to reach out and say that, hey, I enjoy the information that you're putting out. So it's just the long road of social media and another platform to kind of get information out, I think.
It's a cool excuse just to talk to coaches. That's why I started mine up. I thought I don't care whether anyone
Absolutely.
downloads it. I just want
Right.
an excuse to talk to people about coaching.
100%. It really is. I always, I said that in my earlier podcast. I'm like, this is just a selfish reason for me to get better. And then you guys get to hear the conversations that I've been having phone calls with some of the top coaches in the world for over 15 years. Why not share it with the rest of the people?
Yeah, so that's what I'm doing. I certainly haven't hit your download targets, I'm sure, with my podcast yet, but hopefully it'll build up as we go along. But as I said, I'm doing it just to talk to coaches, so that's pretty cool.
Absolutely. You're doing a great job.
Mate, so thank you so much for your time. We've kept you plenty of time, but I've got a few questions I'd like to ask everybody. So I'm going to throw those questions at you to finish off today. So, any tips for coaches starting out there? Your advice for coaches starting out?
Yeah. So, so I've done my homework on my end here. So I've got a list for you. All right. So, first thing that comes to mind is do your best to put yourself in a position to teach as much as possible, even if it's for free. And I think that's the main thing is like I said, there's no certification for experience. Like you can't learn to teach on the internet. You can only learn to teach by actually trying to help people, making mistakes and failing, and then getting better in that way. So that's the first thing. Second thing is don't be afraid to reach out to coaches that you want to learn from and go spend time with them and watch them work. Like get in the trenches and actually watch them teach. I think shadowing is one of the best ways to really start to gather your information, and then obviously you're gonna go and do your own thing as far as your philosophy, your style, and how you deal with people. But it's never been easier than it is now with the internet. I mean, I get guys that always reach out to me to come by and watch me coach, and it's an honor to have that opportunity to share. And I've never turned anybody down. So that's a huge thing. The next one would be make sure that you work on your EQ as well as your IQ. EQ meaning the emotional intelligence. In the social media age, I think information is great, but sometimes we lose that connection of face to face contact and developing relationships. And your people skills are super important. So I'd say work on your people skills, work on your presentation skills, volunteer to speak at some Rotary Club or what. I mean, obviously now with COVID, everything's kind of shut down. But I mean, once things open up, it's like volunteer to speak to your junior group or your club, host a fireside chat at your club or something. But working on presentation skills has probably changed my career bigger than most things, because I was a super shy, backward kid, young professional when I started at Dana's. And that's one thing. Speaking of the earlier question of what she's taught me, that was a big part of it. And if you go back and listen to the pod that I did with her, you can kind of hear how it comes through. But that was a really big thing that she taught me, was how to public speak, and she forced me into some really uncomfortable situations that made me fail a lot, but also made me better. And then lastly, I would say find a mentor that cares and that will push and challenge you. Um, and this goes back to my board of directors thing comment earlier. Is Napoleon Hill wrote a great book called Think and Grow Rich, which is one of my personal favorites, old school kind of social personal development book. And he talked about the Mastermind Crew, and all that means is basically surrounding yourself with people that not just friends, but also they're going to be like-minded and are going to push you in a direction that you want to go. You can share goals with them. You can tell them your plans. And when you start doing that, then people are going to push you and people are going to hold you accountable. So I think that's really important. And then the last thing I would say is uh, when you start to get better, and this is something, a trap that I kind of went through when I started to get a little bit of a reputation and the ego started coming out, is always try to keep a beginner's mindset and keep an open mind to learn new information, and always have the other person in mind rather than yourself. So the servant attitude is like super, super important. And it doesn't make any sense until you start to develop that. And not that you want to get something back, but it's amazing how things change when you start helping other people.
Really, really cool answers there. Plenty of great advice for coaches out there, mate. You've just blown that question out of the water. So I feel sorry for the person coming on after you to have to answer that question now. So that's cool. So hopefully there's a few golfers tuning into my podcast as well. So any tips for golfers out there?
Yeah, I mean, this this is a tough one. I think when you're, I would guess approach it to looking for a coach, right? So that's the thing, that golfers are, they're looking on YouTube, they're looking on Instagram, and they're all looking for coaches. And I hate that I got to turn down a lot of aspiring golfers because I'm in a private club. A lot of times I can't teach a lot of the people that reach out to me. But what I would say is do your research. When you're looking for a coach or looking for instruction, is talk to other golfers and just see who has the best reputation. And then I love when people reach out to me and ask me, like, before, I mean, obviously most of my members are like, what's your philosophy? What do you believe in? Right? Do your homework before you just go and, pay $150 for a golf lesson. I think that's important. I'm big on trying to get my golfers or get my players to grow their golf IQ. Right. So I would say when you take lessons, it's a two-way street, right? It's not just the teacher's responsibility to teach. It's also the student's responsibility to learn. And that means taking notes, journaling, following up, understanding your golf swing, understanding your tendencies and your biases, I think is really important, because then, as we know, everybody's going to go online, and I can't bash the people that are putting stuff online, because I'm doing the same thing. I've got videos out. I've got a newsletter. I've got, an app. I mean, everybody's looking at my videos, but if you know your golf swing and you know your tendencies, then you've got that filter that allows you to sift through the things that are not right for you, and or in the things that are right for you. This drill's what I'm working on with my coach. This will be great. Let me try this. If it's the opposite of what you should be doing, then that could hurt you. Right. So I think you can't be, you just got to, and I think students nowadays are definitely more intelligent than they ever have been, just because of the information that we're putting out there. But there's still plenty of people that are trying stuff or going down the wrong rabbit hole because they don't understand their own golf swing.
Makes sense. Makes lots of sense there. So great advice for golfers out there. Where do you see yourself golf coaching? You can answer all three or either one in 5 years' time. Have you got any long-term goals set up?
Yeah, I mean, God, I'm so fortunate to do. I mean, I've overachieved so much of what I ever thought I would ever come to. You know, for like I said, a redneck from West Virginia that really didn't have a whole lot coming up. There's not a whole lot for me to achieve. I would love to spend a little bit more time traveling. And I hope to do that, with maybe a couple of my young players, maybe make it on tour. I would love to. I would love to try the tour thing. I've got a lot of tour coaches that are friends that tell me you're probably going to last about 2 weeks and probably rethink that because it's not all. I understand it's not all glamour and glitz, but I enjoy doing that. I enjoy working with my mini tour guys and my college players. But more importantly, I'd say I really would like to do more traveling and more collaborating with other coaches. I just had my friend James Lights just called me this morning and we were talking about some things and he's like, man, we need to get together and like do some workshops and start getting some other coaches together. I did that for 7 years when I was coming up when I first started at Carmel. I did the Guru workshop for 5, 6, 7 years, having all these top coaches in to speak, and it was great. And it just got to be a lot. So I kind of handed that over to Andrew Rice, which is doing a great job now with Coach Camp and putting that together. He does a much better job than I did. But I would kind of like to get back into that a little bit. I've done a lot of small collaborations with guys like Scott Calx and James Ridyard and John Graham, and doing some things with my friends to kind of get some pros in there. But that's kind of, I'd like to travel more. I would hope my job. I haven't been to Australia yet, so
You have
we
to
can
come
maybe
on down.
we can do a seminar over there. I would love to just travel and see the world, honestly, because now my kids are both in college and I've got a little bit more time. I would love to do that.
That sounds really cool. Now, if you're talking to James Lights again, I have hit him up with an email to come on the podcast, and he hasn't answered me.
Oh
So
my gosh, you got to get
I'm a
him
bit
on.
upset about that.
He is a fantastic guest. That's a wealth of knowledge. Yeah, you've got to get him on. He's the best podcast guest because you can ask him one question, he'll just go for like 30 minutes, and because
he
he's
was
got so much to share. He's such a good dude.
he was here for 2008 coaching summit here in Australia, and I helped him with his PowerPoint because he couldn't do the tech stuff. So he owes me a favor.
There you
But
go.
but I've sent him an email and he hasn't answered yet. So chase him up for me. I'd
I
appreciate
will
that.
text him after we're done.
Okay, so anything you would change career wise or personally in your life?
Wow. I mean, I think we all are here because of the failures and the bumps in the road that we've had and what we've learned. And I think I wouldn't change a lot. I would probably, if I had to answer that honestly, I would have been a little bit more intentional in the early part of my career. I just kind of, I think, really didn't have a whole lot of direction, like in my 20s, until I got to Dana's, of really what I wanted to do. So I feel like I always tell my guys that work for me because they're so far ahead of me. Like I'm still like 5 years behind of where I should be in my learning and in my development. So I just feel like I feel like I wish I could have 5 years back of really getting after it and researching and doing certifications and spending more time, watching other teachers teach and just getting better. Um, but overall, I've been pretty happy with my career.
Makes sense. Now I'm going to throw you a curly one just to
Oh
finish
wow!
off that I didn't tell you was coming. So I want to hear about your billboard. I want to hear about what you would
Oh,
have on your billboard.
that's yeah. You're turning the tables on me here.
I am.
So,
I'm
so
swapping it around.
I'm gonna get a couple of billboards here. So one, how I love Jim Rohn, big influence socially, personal development wise. But one quote that always stuck with me that he said was, "For things to change, you have to change." So for things to change around you, your situation, your life, whatever you're complaining about, you have to look inward first, and you have to change. Right. The second one is the one that I always leave, with my talks and my speeches, is just from Zig Ziglar, and that's, if you can help as many other people get what they want, you can have everything you want if you're interested.
I like it. I like it a lot. So, but you've just broken the rules. You can't have two. You don't give your guys two.
Yeah, I
You
do.
only give them one.
Sometimes,
Oh,
sometimes.
I don't think I've ever heard of two. I think I've only ever heard of one. So,
You gotta
you
dig in and listen to a few more episodes, man.
I might have to. I've been tuning in for a couple of years. I think since you started, just about. So,
Thank you. I
um,
really
I
appreciate
might.
that.
So, where can people find you if they want more information about you, or are keen for some coaching, or just to have a chat? What's the best place to get a hold of you?
Yeah, just any of the social platforms, Instagram, Twitter. It's at Golf Guru TV. It's that handle came from my Guru TV days from YouTube, uh, from the beginning of Twitter, and then you can check out my website at golfgurutv.net, and you can sign up for. I do a weekly newsletter that I send out to my members and anybody that's interested. All I could do is enter your email at the bottom of the website that has like some extra content and also a link to my podcast. So
Awesome, mate.
I'm not hard to
Thank you.
find.
Thank you so much for your time. I think I got to about halfway through my points that I'd written down, so we might have to line up a part two later on next year sometime.
Be happy to do it, man. Anytime. Thank you so much for having me on, and keep up the great work.
Mate, it was awesome chat today. We'll catch up real soon.
Sounds great.